come out clearly. And then we go to the nutrition, and then we briefly talk about how to integrate these husbandry practices into herd management, herd management practices. And expected learning outcomes at the end of this module, or even this subtopic, specific subtopic, is that we should be able to understand the pastoral range and ecosystem in the context of herd management to ensure optimization of nutrition needs of livestock, as well as maintenance of the ecosystem for future utilization. And this being a panel of some sort, I know many of you have interacted with pastoralists and also where they carry out their business in the rangelands, and so you may have some idea of how different pastoral communities, carry out their herd management and ensuring the nutritional needs of the livestock are met, which is probably different from somebody else's experience. And that's why this is sort of a panel. It's not a one-man show that it's a know-it-all sort of thing. So different experiences from different communities, all of them to achieve a similar goal. Yeah. So I wanted to start with this slide where at the end of this series of modules, I want to pose a question of where uh, do we as livestock keepers, managers, communities, researchers, etc., want to be? Which direction are we heading with pastoralism? And how will the decisions of herd management go with other interconnecting issues such as land tenure and land policy? So do we have the free range sort of pastoral production system, or do we go to conservancies and ranches? What do we lose? What do we gain? Who's the ultimate loser? Who ultimately gains? Or there's no win-win in this sort of situation. And there's a lot of debated questions that would come from this for those who are pro and pro first photo, and those who prefer probably a different sort of management system of pastoralists. So let's get to it. So grazing systems, which will be covered in the other modules, and also herd management have close linkages that affect each other directly and indirectly. And we do see that the earliest herd management systems, which are still being carried out today in different sections of the world, involved nomadic herdsmen moving livestock from one range location to another. That's the key thing about pastoralism. It's the mobility aspect in search of forage and water resources. That's really key. It's always being in search of. So it's a mobility sort of production system, and so the aim is to get forage in high quantity and forage in high quality together with water resources. And so the pastoralists have to be one with nature to understand how the ecosystem works, understand how weather patterns work, understand how climate shifts are going. That way, they'll be able to move in this mobility to move where they're going to gain the optimum, if not the maximum resources for their livestock and for the continuity of the herd, and also for the continuity of the community. So in many pastoral areas across the globe, whether you're in Kazakhstan or you're in Karamoja or you're in the Maasai Lands or you're in Argentina, this practice is still being carried out of mobility. Just that some may have free range, but others will be having fences to curtail their movements. And so the human here, we're saying how the human population pressures demand greater productivity from agricultural land, and thus the herd management systems changed. So the land use policies changed across the globe, politics, and other many other factors. So these shifts have changed how pastoralists live, and changing their way of life, essentially. And so in the rangelands, the pastoralists have indicators for herd and rangeland management. I'll keep saying herd and rangeland because they are all intertwined. To a pastoralist, there is no one without the other. So this to manage this herd, you need also to manage this rangeland so that because they are co-benefiting. The rangeland is benefiting from the products of the livestock, and the livestock are benefiting from the rangeland. So they have certain indicators which show show the practical utility of that rangeland resource, and also the utility of the herd towards that rangeland resource. And so we have two indicators. One is the diagnostic ecological indicators. And what does that mean? By diagnostic, it just means you know how to pinpoint certain things to prescribe a solution, or yeah, probably a solution. So diagnostic ecological, looking at the ecology, looking at the land, looking at the ecosystem. So this reflects the relationship between biophysical landscapes and livestock productivity. As you see, it's still intertwined. You're looking at the how what the land is having from the bio point of view, the physical point of view, so the plants and fauna, flora, and how the pastoralist herds are doing. Are they producing enough milk? Are they dropping calves every year because they have good feed resources, and so on and so forth. And so one is the biophysical landscapes, and we have another example is plant indicators that reflect the utility preferences, suggesting that some landscapes, because of their poor grazing potential, maybe they will always support less livestock than others, even under the most favorable conditions and management. So you see, when this type of plant is sprouting, then you know during that period of time, grass may not, pasture may not be able to do well in that area. So these are some of the ecological indicators that pastoralists may use while trying to do their hard and rangeland management. And so by linking livestock productivity performance to indicator changes, herders are acutely aware of the production indicators that influence their decision making on herd movements. So they see we are seeing how this pasture is going, how it's diminishing, how it is deteriorating, how it's degrading, and then you look at the performance of the animal. And we're going to see in a different slide how we as scientists, we have ways of determining the body condition score of the animal, but they also know how to score to determine the body condition score of the animal. If they see a certain number of ribs are being seen, they do know, okay, we need to move now because these animals are not getting enough feed resources. In the evenings, some of them do what is called ballotment. They may be just ballotting, which is pushing the left side of the rumen just to have a feel of the amount of feed which this animal has taken in. And so they will be able to see that, okay, this is the biomass that the land has, and this is what that this animal has been able to take up. And if the rumen doesn't feel hard enough during this allotment, then they know, okay, I think we have depleted the feed resources and we need to move because essentially um, in terms of herd management, for many pastoralists, and which is different from management of herds in other production systems, you're not really going to 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 remove animals from the herd due because of either increase in the numbers, like you say, okay, I think we are overgrazing now, then we need to cut our herd by 30. So most pastoralist communities see their livestock as a different form of wealth. So to dispose of them just because of drought is quite a difficult thing, and that's why the hard management is usually based on these indicators, but we're going to speak about that in a few. And then the second indicator for the hard management is the anthropogenic indicators. So these are parts of human environmental history and products of people's perceptions. They might not be fully scientifically determined, but perceptions of local environment. So it provides information about the productivity of livestock in terms of milk yield, body condition, mating frequencies, as well as changes in body and weight. So this is what we're saying. They're looking at the animal, and anthropogenic means from the human point of view, and they're able to determine what to do. And so the adverse changes in both ecological and anthropogenic. So the first picture here, apologies, I do not have the sources of those pictures, shows these changes in the ecology of the land. And then you have your anthropogenic indicators also. These would help you to determine where not just if, but when to move, and how fast you should move so that the animals are going to get resources, feed resources as such. So combining these two, then we have what we can infer at two levels is that firstly, herders take their cue from the condition of the forage. So that's the ecological. So the forage by focusing on the key forage plant species. Okay, so they have these plants that they know during the rainy season, this is what we're going to get. Once this plant starts to die, then or to degrade, then we do know that we need to start moving. Some of you here, we've been able to interact with you as you presented some of your scientific research, and you have even better examples of how herders get to determine the forage quality and quantity based on the color, for example, the color of the pasture. So they know when it's green of this hue, then we are safe. We have enough pasture for the animals. When it changes to a yellow hue of the pasture, it means something is happening. We are starting to the weather patterns are changing, and now we're going to the dry season. When it becomes brown, then we have a different indicator. So looking at the forage and plant species. Something else which they may look at, which also I would like to reference one of you who is in this meeting, looking at sward length and height of the pasture. So they know how to measure, and they say, okay, if the length, okay, of the sward of the pasture is this long, we are okay. But once it starts reaching a certain level, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, it means we are going to the precipice. We are reaching a level where there's not going to be forage in a long time, or rather in a while. And so they need to make decisions. Who is going to consume this feed? Should we take our animals elsewhere? Other groups of animals elsewhere? We leave the young ones to eat here first. We take the older ones at a greater distance far away. Or do we decide that only browsers can stay here so that they can take advantage of the browse species in the area, and remove the grazers, because the grazers are going to destroy everything. If the sword size is a centimeter in length, then they're going to trample on it and destroy even newly upcoming grass. So those are decisions that they need to make very, very, very quickly as time goes by. So that's the first. And then the second thing is that the herders, by making deductions from livestock production performance, then they make decisions about changing grazing conditions. So these assessments are done simultaneously with those of livestock production performance. So that's essentially how they intertwine with this herd and range land management. So what do we want to say? What you're saying is that herders, they do recognize that some landscapes are more suited for grazing camels. That's what I was saying a few moments ago, than cattle or small ruminants. And that such suitability depends on the availability of key forage species. So for example, if you see this picture, I took this picture in Pokot. Uh, um, it might be here, the land looks sort of bare. So cattle, sheep, they may not be able to, let me get, sorry, they may not be able to get, I want to get the annotate. Yeah, so, like, yeah, so they may not be able to get anything from this sort of landscape. So probably camels and goats might be the ones who are going to benefit. So you put your camels and goats here and decide that your grazers are going to go to a different location. Um, to a different location. So these are decisions which pastoralists have to make on a continuous basis. Okay, so they have to have these knowledge systems that are necessary to regulate their herd and grazing patterns. Therefore, this also picture shows how that landscape looks like. But when you go inside, then you find that there's really not so much pasture that can support grazers in this land. So they have to move quite far to try and get pasture. And to move far, then it means you have to interact with, where is it? You have to interact with other communities. So this one was again in Pokot, and this lands on this area. It's Turkana, near Lake Turkana, the southern endpoints of Lake Turkana. So the Pokot have to go to these ends to look for pasture. And what does that mean? They meet the Turkana pastoralists and competing for similar resources. Then we get to have these sort of conflicts. So what I wanted to say here is that a particular landscape might have high suitability for browsing species during a given season, but low suitability for the grazing species. So what happens is when there's high rainfall and the ecosystem can support pasture, then you have your grazers here, and afterwards you have to migrate them. Going back here. And so I have about 3 case studies to just show how these pastoralists get to make these sort of decisions. And you're going to look at the Horn of Africa. So three communities in Afar. In Kenya, we're looking at the Orma, and in Uganda slash Turkana, we look at the Karamoja. So these indigenous range management knowledge of pastoralists in these areas, they exhibit common themes in their usage of range, in their range assessments and monitoring to manage their herds. And later on, after we just go through these few case studies, then we are going to see what are the common themes, just as a summary, and also you might also bring in some of the common themes that you have experience of. So we start with case number 1, the Orma of Kenya. So the key grazing landscapes are the floodplains of the Tana River and other seasonal dry streams that serve as fallback during periods of stress. But majorly they are found in the Tana Delta, and in these areas, in the drier areas, they have dug wells and surface dams, both natural and man-made, that create an overlapping grazing systems of land use, which require livestock mobility. And so, but at the same time, the communities which are near these floodplains are also agriculturalists. So you find that the Orma being confined to one specific section, then their lands are very heavily overgrazed. And when dry seasons come, then the animals may want to go into other communities' lands where probably they're going to consume the crops, or which is going to cause conflict, as you do know, when the Orma and the Pokomo do fight because of this, or going to get the crop residues. Once the crop agriculturists then harvest their crops, what is left as residue can be given to, excuse me, can be utilized by the Orma or even other communities. Incidentally, this photo, I took it recently. As with some of you in this meeting, we were coming from a conference just less than 3 or 4 days ago. And so I was able to capture this image of the Tana Delta. And even just before the Tana Delta, we see how that land looks like before it reaches the delta. These are the dry streams that feed these rivers during the rainy season. And when it's dry season, then you can see from the photo on the right, there's not so much feed resources in these areas. But in the same photo, as you're coming towards the delta, then there's some. If I can put. Okay, I can't put it right now, but you can see the greenish area. But in the first photo, you do see how when the Tana Delta is flooded, then there's a lot of feed resources for animals in this delta. But because these areas are not so huge, then you can see where the delta is on the right photo and the rest of the land is all desert. Then you get to see why the rangelands are heavily overgrazed by the animals, and they're not going to reduce the number of animals essentially. So nature sort of takes care of this huge number of livestock, because it's scientists who come with these models where we can calculate the total livestock units in per acre of land per year to determine the amount of grazing potential that the land has. But for them, they use their own methods, the indigenous knowledge. They may not be refined, so I'll call them just crude. They're not refined. And they incur losses due to the lack of finesse in this. Okay, so those are the two different scenarios of the same river basin and the Tana floodplains. And so we do see, again, in this picture, that the indigenous knowledge of the Orma is built around cattle management. In this, as we described this case study. So their systems of grazing at a broader scales combine key grazing resources, which were divided into grazing social networks among clans. So the different clans decide, okay, you members are going to graze in that area, you guys are going to graze in that area, and so you establish access to pasture through mutual grazing arrangements. That's how they were they still do make these decisions. So you have your scouts who are sent far across the lands to go do their own assessment of the pasture and the forage. And when they return, then they give that information to the elders of the clans. And then now the elders of the clans are going to decide, okay, this is how we are going to share these resources based on one, the number of animals that we have, the species of livestock that we have, so that from the report that they get from the scouts, then they do know where to go. But at the same time, as you see in this photo, in this same delta, there's uh, people who are doing crop agriculture. So they have to share the same resources, the same land with other communities. And so within individual grazing associations, these networks, then grazing landscapes are allocated to either wet, dry, or drought grazing. So what you see is that the wet season grazing landscapes are visited during the rainy season when the landscape is full of water. And when these are exhausted, then the communities return to their traditional dry season grazing lands, the river, floodplain, and the delta. So when resources are in large amounts, then they're able to go very far to look because they're comfortable. There's a lot of wells, uh, pans, water pans. They'll be able to access feed and water resources. But when it starts drying, then you find the communities are now compressing themselves around the river plains where they'll be able to get feed resources. And we'll see an alternative in others where now the dry grazing season is where they go very far away to set up their camps. And during the wet season, they're much nearer the water pools. But these other threats from that the Orma people do face as they try to do this hard and range management. And one of the greatest threats for the Orma, and shall see even for the others, is they're reducing land size. And this is due to competing agricultural irrigation schemes. Previously, many of you might be aware, we do have, well, maybe right now it's defunct, the Tana River and the Tana River irrigation schemes, which was around 12,000 acres or hectares of land. I'm not so sure, but around 12,000 acres of land. And this was already putting pressure on the Orma because these are government-sanctioned irrigation schemes where they're growing all these types of crops, including cotton. And they were also the rangelands for pasture for the Orma. And now, with changing governments, we are seeing the Galanakulalo scheme, which is 1.2 million acre scheme. Just imagine you're already having a problem with irrigation schemes which are 12,000 acres, and now you have a 1.2 million acre irrigation scheme as we have right now. This removes you from the equation. It really forces you out of the ecosystem, so to say. And so it's really the greatest threat to pastoralism as a way of life by the Orma. And so they may be forced to have to move northwards further towards Somalia and Ethiopia. And again, this creates more conflict. And then the other source of threat is these invasive species, such as Prosopis juliflora, which were introduced through forestation in the irrigation scheme. So you introduce agroforestry in the irrigation schemes, and then this becomes an invasive species, which now kills the pasture. And you find that this species presently covers 20 to 30% of the rangelands in the lower Tana, where it prevents grass growth and canopy. We do know on the other side of Baringo in Kenya, There's work done by the scientists from Tufts University, I think Eddie Griffith, and we do know of madenge, the plant madenge, which causes also similar, is an invasive species which is destroying the landscape and also causing health problems to the goats. So these are real threats to the Oromo as such. I introduced this table here from Gufu Oba et al. In 2012, where other scouts and ecology scientists assess the Orma rangelands at landscape. I squeezed out some of the details of the table, but I wanted to show you some of the diagnostic ecological indicators that they were using. As for them, red soil, gray, let me see if I can annotate. Okay, um, so unfortunately, if I annotate here, let me remove this one out of here. So red soil, the second or third row, gray soil, white soil, dark soil. The season of grazing, wet. For gray soils, it's better for dry, white, wet or dry seasons of grazing, etc. Grazing suitability, GS. So goats, it's very when when the area has red soil, it's the grazing suitability is high for goats. When it is gray, it might be low for cattle or high during the dry season. And also there might be reduced bush encroachment. When there's white soil, you have it's good for cattle. It's a high grazing suitability. How about the landscape grazing potential? Low for cattle. So when it's goats for high for goats, then it is low for cattle, and so on and so forth. If you look at the condition, they say these are the scouts assessment and the ecologists, they say it's moderate. For the gray soil, it's good. And white soil, it's during the wet dry season, it's kind of poor. And then the degradation, here they show that the threat is high, but there is resilience. Same to the second one. And in the white, during wet dry season, they report a moderate threat. But in the dark soil, during the wet season, which is only the grazing suitability is for camels, then the degradation is quite high. Um, and so they have these harder scouts have to determine how they're going to keep it there, how they're going to graze and manage their herds. That's case number one. Case number two, apologies, I failed to edit it nicely here. It's case number two. It's the Afar of Ethiopia, who are just near the eastern border of the Red Sea. And the Afar pastoralists constitute one of the largest pastoral communities. Okay, so I thought there were questions. So the Afar pastoralists constitute one of the country's largest pastoralist populations, accounting for about 29% of the total pastoralist population. Ecologically, this region is arid to very arid and is therefore one of the harshest environment in the Horn of Africa. And much of the landscape is quite harsh, and you'll see that in a few minutes. So camels dominate the Afar pastoral production. Even though small ruminants are also important sources of livelihood, but are culturally not as important as camels are. As you can see here, this photo by Louis Montrose, then the land is very harsh, and there is not so much feed resources in this area, and much of this, as you may see, looks like uh, dry lake beds, which are sort of salt mines. So small ruminants may not be able to survive here, but camels may be able to go long distances to look for water and feed resources. So this is what I was just emphasizing the point that camels do dominate this area, but sheep and goats are not so important and may not be able to survive this sort of an environment. And how do the herders and the scouts and ecologists assess these lands? Just similar to the one we had before, you have your soil indicator, black, rocky, white, black with pebbles, black with pebbles. So they do show that these are for grazing suitability. They are great for camels, goats. When there's black soil, it's good for cattle. When there's white soil, which is probably because of salt, when the salt is too high, then it's the grazing suitability is low for all species. In terms of grazing potential, it's heavy, and so there's zero herbaceous cover for the white, as you can see here, zero really herbaceous cover, and so. But those with black soils with pebbles on the last row here, the condition might be excellent, and the grazing potential is high. So because of this, what happens? Then the afar pastoralists have to move to look in search of pasture and feed resources and water. So conflicts do arise with Ise Somali. But they still have to share this the traditional wet season grazing lands. So the insecure rangelands are underutilized because of war, because of conflicts. Then those rangelands are underutilized, while the secure ones are overutilized because all the communities go to graze their livestock there, so they become overutilized. And another threat is the establishment of the Awash National Park and commercial agricultural irrigation in the Awash River. Again, irrigation schemes, which has removed much of the land required for dry season grazing. And the third threat is also the same threat from Prosopis juliflora, which is, again, because of these irrigation schemes, then the introduction of these species then makes them invasive. Then number three, the third case, and then we can take a break. It's the Karamojong, the Matheniko of Uganda. So the Karamojong rangelands are highly heterogeneous and receive the highest rainfall, around more than 450 millimeters of rain per year compared to the Orma and Afar rangelands. They're quite healthy ecosystem due to these high rainfalls. So these rangelands contain rich pasturelands, and transhumance movements take place between the lowlands in the wet season and the marshes and mountains in the dry season. This is the area of the Karamoja, which is bordering the Turkana of northern Kenya. How does the landscape look like? So part of the Karamojong community, the Matheniko, occupy the rangelands around the town of Moroto. Some of you have been in these rangelands doing your data collection. And their grazing lands extend to the western borders of Kenya, occupied by the Turkana pastoralists, with whom the Matheniko share resource use networks, as well as occasional conflicts. We say occasional because they're sort of similar Nilotic groups who understand each other on a familial basis first. And so the conflicts might be there, but very minimal. They sort of handle well their grazing management and also their herds as such. So herders in these areas have evolved in-depth knowledge in terms of systems of landscape classification using diverse environmental features such as topography, soil, and dominant vegetation. Those are the diagnostic ecological indicators that we are speaking about. So this is the knowledge that herders use to determine the spatial distribution of livestock grazing and herd management, so they can know where should we go and at which time by looking at these indicators. And so from these indicators, they are able to see, okay, we can settle, when we are settled here, because for the Karamojong is sort of different. where when they're settled here, their livestock can go far distances, or rather close distances, when on the right picture, when it's the wet season. And during the dry season, as you see in the first picture, then the land is bare. There is no feed resources. There's no pasture. So the animals have to go very far to the river plains, and as you can see here, much more greener. This would indicate probably follows like a river, if I'm not so wrong, and that's where they would take their animals. So the animals, that's where the feed resources would be acquired, as compared to this first picture. So this is what we're saying. They have to use the environmental features such as topography, soil, dominant vegetation, and other ecological diagnostic indicators. And for the third, this for the Karamojong, they used similar indicators. Those are the common themes that we are seeing. Soil indicator with pebbles, soil color is varied, lava stone, dark soil, white, red, mixed, black. And for them, they would show that, okay, it's good for cattle, for camels, it's better. Camels do well when it's lava stone. And goats do moderate, because here in Lavastone, you might know that then pasture may be difficult to grow, but browsing species will be able to do well. Cattle will do high in the rest of the soils. So the conditions are excellent, and cattle do very well, and then the landscape has a high grazing potential, especially either during the dry or wet season. So the decisions are made by these herder scouts, or rather, decisions are made by the clan elders based on the information that the herder scouts have brought to them. So what are the common themes that we are seeing? So we do see that the landscapes have identities. That's what we do see from the Afar, from the Karamoja, from the Orma. What we do recognize is that the names describe the physical topography, soils, and vegetation. And something which I didn't bring out clearly was that other names that these herder scouts and the clans use describe historical events. So they would say during the time of the Great Flood or the Great Dry Season, then this is what we were able to see, and we went this direction to search for livestock pasture for livestock. So they would describe events also based on those historical events. Historical events also include things like locust invasions. So when the time we saw this locust invasion, then we did see something different. When we saw this great flood, then we saw animals die, probably Rift Valley fever, or rinderpest. They may not know the diseases by such names, but they'd be able to describe historical events and describe and say, okay, this is not a good season at all. Then the landscape classification criteria may combine cultural events such as historical settlements and the types of topography. Historical settlements you'd see, for example, uh, if I speak about the Orma, Gala, and the crop agriculturists who in Kenya, in this area of Kenya, we call them Mijikenda, then they would say in the year 1650s, when the Mijikenda were settling in the areas just below the Juba River, there was conflict with the Orma and the Gala due to these feed resources, and then these ones had to migrate. So that's how they would describe these historical events. Then grazing landscapes used by herders include key resources grazed during the dry season or drought periods. That one you'll be able to see that common theme. And the key resources might include marshes, mountain grazelands, river valleys, and floodplains to determine where do we go during the dry season and where do we go during the wet season. And that's where I will stop for now before going to the nutrition husbandry aspect of how they pastoralists in the rangelands determine how to take care of their animals. It's again intertwining because as you do the herd management, you're doing the grazing systems management, you're doing the nutrition management, the husbandry management. So let me stop there for now, and then to have some interactions, some feedback, then we continue. I don't know if I have the rights to.
Yes, if people are interested in asking questions, they can raise up their hands and then we can allow them to speak. Yeah. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Or if you are shy to speak, you can put your question in the Q&A. I think you can. They are saying thank you, so they are happy.
Oh, are they in the chat? Oh, I can see in the chat now. Okay, now I see in the chat. Okay, good. Yes, I see quite a number of attendees. Some of them that I was using part of their resource and knowledge, people like Haron Akala, when I was speaking about the yellow hues from his presentation at the Tropentag conference. Okay, so let me drink my coffee before we continue. So on the nutritional aspect, again, I said these are cross-cutting, intertwined. There's no one without the other. And that's how pastoralists see their system, not one without the other. And here in this section, I've put images of different systems to do some thought-provoking in your areas of specialization to see where. Remember the first question, where we want to go to achieve this sort of type of animal. How do we want to go? What's the husbandry aspect? Because husbandry takes the shape of many things. Here in this module, it might center a little bit on nutrition, but husbandry takes the form of many things. One, takes the form of animal care, management, welfare. It takes care of animal health. It takes care of breeding. It takes care of nutrition. So in breeding, what sort of breeds do you want to see on your pasture land? How do you want to make use of these feed resources to optimally bring this animal to the weight as determined by its breed as such. So is it only by ranching that you can achieve this utilization of feed resources, or even from traditional pastures, you'll be able to do this sort of breeding and feeding the animals to take care of them. So this is where husbandry comes from those 4 or 5 major entities of husbandry. These days there's a deviation from the word husbandry, animal husbandry, but from the etymology of the word, it just means it's where the word husband comes from. One who is able to decide very judiciously about the resources of the family. So the resources of the and so the husband is the one traditionally who was able to determine how resources of the household of the community are going to be shared to ensure longevity of the household. So in animal husbandry, crop husbandry, you're determining the resources that you're going to provide to either these crops or these animals to ensure that you get the maximal or even optimal output from them. And so animal husbandry serves as a cornerstone of traditional and modern agriculture, intertwining the art and science of managing livestock. It's a combination of that. And so that's why you see some people are able to do better because of using the art, the indigenous knowledge, and integrating now bits of science from research, and then they're able to do better. And effective practices not only enhance productivity, but also promote the overall health of animals. That's essentially what husbandry is. You have the pastoralists who have to take care of the animals. They have to ensure the animals are doing well, they are happy in some way. You have your second arm of the animal health attendants, your veterinarians, your community paravets who are going to ensure that these animals are vaccinated and or dewormed or given supplements or any other thing that's going to improve their health. And then in that animal health, here I put two photos, one of myself here with this camel, and one here of one of the supervisors of one of the students here. This is Dennis Macau, who we were working with in Pokot. Then you have your breeding. So pastoralists also, in their own way, they do know which genetic resource is key in their herd, so that they'll be able to use that animal to breed with another animal and produce much fitter offsprings, and to ensure that there is no inbreeding, but more about outbreeding. Or outbreeding also includes crossbreeding. If you have to borrow a bull from a neighboring clan, which at least in the last 4 to 6 generations, it has not interacted with uh, livestock in your herd, then you'll be having a better breed when you outbreed or crossbreed that animal. And then we have nutrition. How do you get to utilize the resources that we've spoken about to ensure that these animals are doing well? So a little bit of repetition just to bring the point home. And this is that pastoralism refers to a wide family of livestock-based livelihood and food production systems that are highly diverse, but that all share a specialization in improving animals' diets. They're coming to nutrition by managing their grazing itineraries at a variety of scales in time and space. This is what we're talking about dry season, wet season, movement, mobility, scales in time and space. And so better nourished animals are healthier and more productive. And when this happens, we add value by managing grazing itineraries, which require adaptation to levels of variability. That's really the key word for this section of nutrition, variability. How pastoralists are able to work with variable climate, variable weather, variable feed resources, and adapt and ensure that they use this concept of variability, okay, to gain maximally from the diversity of plant species and differences in soil and terrain morphology to result in sequences of concentrations of feed resources. So to ensure that, okay, during this time period, there's concentration of these feed resources in this region, that's where you're going to be. There's concentration of feed resources in that time and that climate during that cultural event. Then we get to make use of those feed resources. And just as I was speaking about its cultural events, I just remembered one key point, that even though pastoralists don't reduce in this herd management, they don't reduce the number of animals so deliberately. Sometimes they may reduce their animals, their numbers, during a cultural event, which might be just before a dry season event. And so when there's that event, there's slaughtering of animals and there's a reduction in the herd number during that cultural event. And beyond there now, the number of animals are reduced as they enter into the dry season until this number of animals are able to utilize the resources during that dry season. When the wet season comes, then the number of animals can increase due to more births. So that's a key point I also wanted to bring about cultural events. And the second thing is, as we're still there, is reducing the number of animals only when there is economic incentive. Um, so do pastoralists keep animals because of economic incentive or more because of cultural incentive? What value is it that they do give to the animals? Is it from the economic or more from the cultural? And so if the value is more economic, you'll find that they're only rearing animals to take to the market. And so they they don't really focus on not so much focus on this climate variability and weather variability, which when catastrophes happen and feed resources are low, then you find that they lose a lot of their animals because the change has happened in their thinking that it's more on the economic sense. There's case studies which show how when some farmers were focused on producing, or rather, the government incentivized farmers to produce sheep or cashmere, then they have to change the type of animals that they had, which were drought resistant, and they keep animals which are able only to produce wool or cashmere for goats. And these animals, when there's climatic catastrophes, there's reduced feed resources, then they all die, and the pastoralist is left without animals, which were initially their identity. So it's important that pastoralists get to manage themselves in this what do I want to say? To manage themselves using the knowledge they have on the variability of their environment. That's what I wanted to say. So the place and time of the concentrations of feed resources cannot be predicted from one year to the next, but the concentrations can be used by pastoralists who are able to arrive at the right place at the right time, and by animals that are able to benefit from the opportunities created by the herders. So this photo I took somewhere near um, Turk Turkana, somewhere called Losam. And you can see here there's a lot of trees, and also on the ground there's a lot of grass. It was not suppressed by the trees. And so I use this photo here to show that when there is concentration of feed resources, which cannot be predicted from year to year, and then you see another thing which I'd mentioned here as an ecological indicator, looking at what other flora and fauna, what other animals are doing. So you can see this ant hill. The ants have built a very, very tall ant hill. That shows there's a lot of water in the area, and the ants are able to survive. There's a lot of feed, and they're able to thrive. So looking at these ecological indicators, as I learned from the pastoralists when working in these areas, I realized they are connected with the land because of what they get to observe. So those who can concentrate this knowledge, to borrow the word again, concentrate this knowledge, those scouts who are able to bring accurate information, then the elders are going to make informed decisions about the nutrition of their animals, because they know these indicators. They know this grass species, they know this plant species, and so they do know these ones will be able to provide better nutrition than and they provide probably higher protein content, higher um, uh, um, uh, carbohydrate or roughage or fiber content. So with that form of information, they know the animal becomes bigger. They don't know that it's the protein content, but they know the animal becomes bigger. They don't know that it's the fiber content, but they do know that when you press a lot this rumen, it feels full. But for us, we know that, okay, now there's enough fiber that's going to be utilized by the ruminal microbiota to make the animal produce more milk. But so we have to uh, uh, we have to complement each other in the knowledge that we do have. Here, I was bringing this image to show how we, as probably on the outside, as the ecologists, as the researchers, as the veterinarians, we do know how to score these animals based on the model that we have of our body condition score from 1 to 10 or from 1 to 5, whichever scale you want to use. And we do know that, okay, when this body condition 1, that's in an emaciated animal, the ribs are very clearly visible, and so on and so forth. When you have body condition scoring 2, slightly visible, less than body condition 1, and so on and so forth. And when you have body condition number 5, as I said, it's in some scales they go up to 10, then you have where the hips and bones show a high fat deposit, ribs are well covered, the tail area is very lumpy. This is an overweight animal as such. So this sort of body condition score, pastoralists would have the same in determining the nutritional uh, 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 condition of their animal, so that they know, okay, this one is a malnourished animal, and we need either, if it's a single animal, we need to see what's the problem. It's several animals, okay, we need to start moving. The grass species which is here is depleted, the feed resources are depleted. That's why I put that here. And the productivity of a pastoral herd rises because of the animals and the herder's active engagement with the ecosystem. This is still on how to make use of the nutrition aspect. So as the ecosystems differ from the Arctic, from the steppe to the savanna, the resulting practices differ. Okay, that's just because of the different climatic conditions, but the underlying logic is the same. These are photos I took somewhere near Siberia in a summer where the cattle and goats are on the grasslands, and you can see the animals just there's no fences. They're just on the grasslands by themselves. The herders are quite far. They will come for the animals later to take them into the sheds. But what I'm saying here is that whether the ecosystem is changing from the Arctic to the steppe to the savanna where we are here, the resulting practices, they differ, but the underlying logic is the same. And what is this logic that we're speaking about? That at smaller scales, pastoralists take advantage of concentration of nutrients that are associated with biodiversity or with differences in soils. So, for example, grass grows earlier on sandy dunes, if you're near Lake Turkana, than on clay soil or terrains, or between day and night, such that grass is more nutritious after a day of photosynthesis. That's when they do not know that the carbohydrate concentration, the sugars are more after this photosynthesis. That's the science part. but they do know that that's the nutritious grass. But also they do know that consumption of too much of that lush grass may lead to some health problems. We are coming to the husbandry part on that health problem. They do know there's bloating that can happen, and they do know how to deal with it. But so if you're able to introduce the livestock to this grass early in the day, then they're going to get the nutritious grass. And the other thing that they do know is that in the life cycle of the plant, annual plants nutrients peak just before flowering. Okay, so they do know how to take advantage of the plants in their individual characteristics, whether annual, whether grasses, whether growing on this type of soils, as we saw in those other tables, or this type of soils. Excuse me. This soil, this picture, I took it again near Turkana, where the pastoralists were also doing a form of agro-pastoralism. So wherever they were, some were also growing I don't know if these are vegetables, because yeah, it's vegetables, because it was pumpkins. They're growing pumpkins. Growing pumpkins, and after harvesting, then they would give these feed resources to the goats. But these were not given to the camels. They were more to the goats and the cattle. So they, they do know what sort of plants will be highly nutritious for the vulnerable species, and the rest they can go consume elsewhere. If we take a trip down to Tanzania on the eastern rangelands, we see that native multipurpose trees, namely acacia, for example, they thrive well in pastoral areas, even in Kenya. And these multipurpose trees are reported by pastoralists as useful feed resources during the dry season, especially for the browsers. They really help them to survive. But then conflicts also arise because the acacia tree is also a very uh, I don't say good, but from the perspective of those who utilize it in that way, it's a very good resource for charcoal. So pastoralists fight with charcoal sellers or burners. I don't want to call them, or merchants, because they want the animals to consume the same, but the charcoal merchants also want to cut this acacia to sell as high quality charcoal. So this is what we get to see. On the right, there's a photo here which shows the Comelina bengalensis, again from the Tanzanian rangeland, sorry. And pastoralists value this plant because of in the dry season, it is considered as a water supplier to ruminants. So it is able to extract water very well from the soil, and it becomes not only just a feed resource, but a water resource. So pastoralists have this knowledge of the different specific plants that they're able to utilize. And so in this discussion, I didn't want it to come from the side of nutrition where we prescribe, okay, this is the nutrient composition of this plant, and so this is what pastoralists should feed their animals. Or that's not what the essence of this nutrition and husbandry component is for the rangelands. It is for commercial keepers of animals, but not for pastoralists. So pastoralists know which plants are most beneficial for which season and for which weather conditions. Again, going back to the Sahel, then we see that pastoralists in this region follow the rains. And so by moving south to meet the rains at the beginning of the rain season, and then following them north as the season progresses, the herders can stay on green pasture for longer than would be possible. Effectively, they are stretching the rainy season. So that way, they are ensuring their animals are getting enough pasture during as the rain is moving. Instead of waiting for the rain and then going to where the rain fell in a season, they go there and they start moving with the rain back to the north. At the end of the rainy season, the herds move to areas with permanent access to water, trying to secure access to good quality dry fodder or crop residues. Now here, once they meet with farmers who have just harvested their pumpkins or their maize stalks, then those stovers become the crop residues. The green gram leaves become the proteinaceous components. Okay, the failed crops and fallow land, now those ones become extra feed resources, because or even supplemental feed resources, because in pastoralism, when it comes to nutrition, they do not have access to supplemental resources such as concentrates. So for them, the supplemental form are these dry fodder, crop residues, failed crops, and fallow land, which is just before it's till. So it's only in commercial that production systems, or even sometimes ranching systems, where you may get animals being introduced to concentrates to just to make them fatter and be ready for the market. So that's their own feeding type of management, nutrition wise. But for the pastoralists, they really have to understand every single plant and every single resource. So this is managing grazing itineraries at the macro scale. And so in pastoral contexts, animals are deliberately bred for variability. So you're looking at the nutrition, and I am introducing some aspect of breeding there. So that way, you're going to select the best types of breeds, which will be drought resistant. But most importantly, this aspect of drought is that they're going to optimally make use of very little feed resources to gain their weight or produce milk. So for production and maintenance purposes. So they do this sort of breeding. So a good herd should have several types of animals. One, a variety of species, from goats to sheep to camels to cows and all, but also within breed diversity. That way, with a variety of capacities to make the most of variable opportunities and variable conditions. So this within breed diversity ensures that if a catastrophe occurs, then they're kind of sure they have not put all their eggs in one basket, so to say, as livestock keepers. So they some will survive, and because they'll be able to make use of the nutrients during that specific period of catastrophe. As I come towards the end, so how do you integrate husbandry and management? Um, so we've talked about the nutrition, we've talked about the herd, but we also have to speak about the health. And so pastoralists also, in their own way, they do manage their herd health in the best way they know. In the traditional sense, in my opinion, I think they used to do better than presently when there's pharmaceutical drugs. Previously, they knew the type of plants that they would feed their animals to remove certain forms of parasite infestations, when there's certain respiratory diseases, when there's metabolic conditions like bloat, when there's lameness, they kind of knew how to deal with these conditions. But now when we go into veterinary pharmaceuticals, and and we make it that it's not regulated, then the pastoralists might abuse the drugs that we use for handling this health condition. So you find that you go to a pastoralist area, and what they get to use for any and all types of diseases is tetracycline, or gentian violet. And so everything is treated using that one drug. So you're creating issues of drug resistance. And because we are the ultimate consumers of the products of the rangelands, then you're creating drug residues, both in the environment and also in the meats, in the products, and also in the milk. So it's important that we support. We're not coming as a top down, looking down on them, but supporting the health aspect and the nutritional aspect by um, uh, uh, helping them to understand about the hard health, the parasite infestations. We assist in doing these dewormings, treating their diseases, doing vaccinations to curtail these diseases which were of great economic importance, such as Rift Valley fever, such as rinderpest, which is now eliminated. And so it is important that we integrate husbandry and herd management with health, with the health component. But the health is usually secondary. If the nutrition is handled well and the herd management is handled well, you don't need a vet. The animals are going to be okay. So as I wrap up, pastoral animal husbandry in the context of the 10 elements proposed by FAO in 2018, um, based on this nutritional aspect and herd management, it is that the innovative approaches inspired by agroecological principles of the FAO, this being holistic management and regenerative grazing, they effectively move modern animal husbandry closer to pastoralism. So eventually, the animal husbandry will go back to the pastoralist form of management, building on the logic of working with the ecosystem. And what do we mean by this? These 10 elements proposed by FAO are: one, diversity. So pastoralism relies on a diversity of species, animal breeds, and plant varieties. Okay, it takes advantage of the synergies between animals, ruminants, and the rangelands through mobility and the adaptability to the variability in forage, seasons, weather, climate. So it makes it very resilient, and it recycles energy and nutrients from manure into fertilizers for pasture and crop fields. And therefore, it is an efficient system that produces high quality protein and essential services with a minimum of resources. And then pastoralism is built on shared human and social values, as it relies on communities and families working together. Um, Again, this creates strong cultural and food traditions associated with centuries of coexistence, and where there is knowledge co-creation, knowledge sharing, and creating a very strong circular and solidarity economies. So this is the embodiment of pastoralism. And finally, sustainable pastoralism requires responsible governance of rangelands, water, and animal resources. And that's why they are the activists of their lands when they say, no, we do not want these factories here. We do not want these mines here. They're going to ecologically damage our lands. When you watch some conversations or listen, sorry, to conversations with pastoralists, they say our ancestors are here. As we graze these lands, the spirits of our ancestors walk with us here. And so, if you're a capitalist, you may not think of it that way. You want to put a dollar value to the ecosystem services. Okay, this is what the land is valued. This is what the dollar value of this. But you can't really put a dollar value to what they perceive in their lands as the spirits of our ancestors. And that's why they don't want the land disturbed, because they have put no dollar value to or shilling value to the spirits of their ancestors. They want the land as is. So they ensure responsible, ethical governance of the lands and such. So probably that's where we're going to head. And at the end of the series of these models, I asked that question at the beginning with a different picture where you had the dry lands, dry rangelands, and then there was the conservancy. Where do we, as livestock keepers, managers, communities, researchers, want to be? I took this picture of bisons somewhere where they were fenced, and I asked myself, where did we go wrong? These were the free living animals of the rangelands of North America, taken care of by the pastoralists of the different tribes of the indigenous communities of the Americas. And right now, they live, if not in the few national parks, uh, in enclosures like where I took this picture from, and is this where we want to head to, where the indigenous people no longer have a connection to the spirits of these animals, so to say, where our Maasai, our Afar, our Karamoja, uh, our communities in the Sahel, the Tuareg, they do not have connections to their animals and to the land. So how will decisions of herd management go with other interconnected issues such as development economics, land tenure, policies, and all? And with that, I come to the end of my presentations. If there's any questions and comments, you may be able to shoot them right now.
Yes, there are three questions which are in the question and answer.
Thank you.
The first one is, how can we assess whether livestock are getting adequate nutrition from natural pasture?
Very cool question. Am I able to see am I able to access the questions?
Yeah, if you click on the box Q&A.
Yeah, it's from there that I'm clicking, but I'm not.
You're
Okay,
not
you can
seeing
just
them.
yeah, but you can just read the questions. So the first question
How,
was, how are we
how
able
can
to?
we how can we assess whether livestock are getting adequate nutrition from natural pasture?
Okay, that's from which perspective? So from the animal nutritionist perspective, this would be a simple. I would say simple, maybe, but maybe not so simple. And that would be to, as we work as ecologists, veterinarians, nutritionists, and all with the pastoralists, the best way would be we use science, we get these feed resources, do simple nutritional composition assays, do your amino acid composition, carbohydrate energy composition, vitamin composition, and you just analyze how much. Okay, we moved away from crude protein. We're now at amino acid. How much crude protein, how much amino acids does this plant provide, or energy does this plant provide? Uh, During that season, during a certain stage of the season, and also different plants in different seasons. That way, we can confidently uh, collaborate with the pastoralists to say, this plant, we do see from the numbers that during wet season, it's more nutritious, or less nutritious than during the dry season. And so we may be able to collaboratively, now we are avoiding talking down to them, but participating with them, participatory approaches to discuss with them as they see the results that this feed resource has actually high potential in helping our animals because of these numbers that we are seeing. So they'll be able to see, okay, these are the numbers. That's the best way, because already they have the indigenous knowledge which says this Bangalensis is actually good because it provides water and it makes the animals grow bigger. How they don't know, but we come in with our nutritional assays, feed composition assays, and we'll be able to help them. That's probably how I can answer that.
Thank you. The second question is, what are the most effective strategies for balancing conservation and productive use in rangeland ecosystem?
That's a very hard question. I say hard because during the conference that we were all in a few days ago, one of the keynote speakers said, uh, the the production guys, the pastoralists are not aware of the work being done by the conservationists. And the conservationists are not aware of this other group of people, the agriculturalists and all. So the thing to do, again, it's a philosophical question, is practically let these disciplines collaborate. Let the conservationists come and all these other different disciplines come to the same table so that we can say, okay, we want to utilize these resources, but the conservationists can say only up to this level, because beyond this level, we've depleted this species from the ecosystem. And so we just, and this is all about grazing in the context of our conversation, grazing management and herd management and nutritional management. It is that we sit also with the conservationists on the same table so that they inform us that this species is disappearing. So if you're going to keep these animals, don't keep sheep here because sheep will graze all of it. Keep browsers only so that this species, other species can get time to regenerate and grow and continue being in the ecosystem. So it is to answer that question briefly, is let's all be in the same table so that we can get viewpoints from the conservation point of view so that we don't also deplete these resources. Thank you.
Okay, the third question is, how can indigenous or local knowledge be integrated into rangeland management practices?
That's a huge question. uh, and I think that's where we have moved to. And these I may not be able to uh, give the best answer. Some people in this conversation, probably like Dr. Joshua Nono, may give, or even Haron Akala may give more comprehensive questions. But the thing is, we have moved to what is called participatory approaches. So to co-create knowledge, co-design methodologies, involve each other in sharing what I know, what you know, and you see where we are able to meet. So it's the doctor and the traditional healer confluence. This one uses roots, but this other one uses the products which they extracted from these roots. All of them have the same goal. They have this different levels of knowledge, but the goal is the same. This one is using the roots, and this one is using the products of the roots at extracted small molecular levels. So when we participate together in solving the problems, then we'll be able to understand, so this is what the indigenous knowledge means. This is what they actually know, what they just don't have the term for it or the mechanistic form of how it happens. But it's just, we just realize we are all have the same confluence of knowledge and the same goals. Again, it's a very broad question and might be answered philosophically for now, but I think other experts here in this forum will be able to answer it better. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question. It says, improved herd management is likely to improve productivity. and the population, how can the carrying capacity question be handled with the pastoralists?
I like your question. Uh, you see, I spoke of it very briefly when I said when we in the science world, we talk about the carrying capacity of the land. Now, if you tell the pastoralists, okay, now the dry season is coming, you need to reduce your number of animals, they're going to refuse because their valuation of their animals may not be in cash form. It's in the non-monetary form, the cultural form. And so, um, by their own way, they will determine that the grasslands, when the herders scouts come back, the grass sward is this size, it can support these animals for this number of days, and it extends from this region to that landscape, that mountain there. So they know this number of animals may be able to feed there properly. But they may not want to reduce. And that's why I mentioned that only through cultural historical events do they sometimes remove herds from the remove animals from the herds to either slaughter during the cultural events, or if there's a financial incentive of having to sell animals to the cities, then the land may be able to carry the number of animals that is suitable for that land. But for now, they may not want to do it. So what happens is that we, from this other side of the world, we give them a different type of incentive. We give livestock insurance, and we say we all a livestock offtake programs where we say we shall buy this number of livestock during this dry season and compensate you this much for this number of animals, or a livestock insurance policy where you, as the pastoralist, has to pay your premiums, and then if they get to die during the dry season, then we can compensate you, and or if and when they die during. But insurance is about risks, so if they die, then we're going to compensate you. And so there's a lot of revolving, interconnecting factors which will determine how this pastoralist is, or even the insurance company or the off-takers are going to get maximum profit from the pastoralist. And also the pastoralist trying to not lose his or their animals as such. So I may have digressed a little bit on that question, but what it is right now is the pastoralists may not necessarily want to keep the number of animals based on the current capacity of the land. It's only through catastrophes that nature takes care of that part. And so, as from this other side, to prevent nature from taking its course, then we provide these products that essentially we're just telling them, okay, let's help you carry the risk because the current capacity of the land during this season will not be able to support your livestock. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. The questions are exhausted now, and I can see from the charts people are thanking you for the great presentation, and we are also grateful for your time and delivering this module to the participants. I know the participants, if they have further questions, they have another platform where they can get in touch with you and ask more questions. Allow me to, on behalf of the Forum Secretariat and the Add Value team, to thank you very much for this wonderful facilitation of this module. Thank you, and I think we end here. Unless if there's anyone who wants to say something, you can raise your hand and I can allow you to speak.
Let me just finish by saying thank you for hosting us, Jolene, and thank you to the participants. I'm sure we shall be meeting you sometime in December for the virtual seminar. And again, in December, for those who are in transdisciplinary, and in January, we shall all meet in Nairobi for the physical one, those who are in rangelands. So thanks a lot, and see you in December.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
See you.